BIP of Bizarre Interest Productions, and I finally finalized my list of content I want to work on this month with my daily uploads. However, it turns out some of you really want to make my dream of becoming a semi-babe tuber kind of true. And just in case some videos take me longer to talk about, especially since I had to upload a video at 11 o'clock last night, I have a few more Beyblade videos I want to do just in case. And yes, I have read the comments that Beyblade vs. Plot Armor video will come before May, I promise. However, I've noticed I've had a pattern on missing out on holidays this year, which absolutely sucks. And as when I'm writing this, there's only either 2 days left until St. Patrick's Day, or I'm recording this on St. Patrick's Day. So if you made it this far into the video, type multi-skilled because it's Women's History Month and St. Patrick's Day. Now, I could do a ton of videos and upload them in one day with no idea how it would screw up the algorithm, talking about my favorite Power Rangers or green character Power Rangers like Piccolo, Martian Manhunter, Surge, Rock Lee, Green Rangers and Green Kamen Rider, Green Goblin, my favorite green Pokemon, Beast Boy, Suyu, and Maria, Layla, both of Mega Man's green forms, but I don't think I can make those into full-fledged videos. Maybe shorts. And then I remembered, oh yeah, Beyblade exists. So, funny story. Defense bladers and blades were originally seen as having 3 colors. Blue in the original series, yellow in the Metal Saga, and only started being green in the Burst and X series. But when you look at the history of the first Defense Beyblades, even the main representatives have been green colored. For example, Max's Drasteel lines have always been either green, and while it has a yellow core with a few more having black, they've been consistent with their color theme. Max wore a green shirt underneath his orange overalls in the first season. In V-Force, he wears blue but has a green t-shirt underneath, and his G Revolution shirt is mixed green, with yellow mostly taking over. Then Kyoya's Rock and Fang Leon's main layers are green with the face bolt for Lion before being the Leo constellation across both versions. And Kyoya wears a green vest over a black shirt in his first 2 seasons. Then by Fury, his clothes are more inverted, so his vest is black while his vest is a darker shade of green. Then in Burst, and while he's the first and not even the main example, despite, I'll save that rant for later, just like a Kensuke, he's got a mix of a turtleneck and a cloak as an overgarment, and his Beyblades are the green colored Kerbeus lines. So glad he came back. And finally in X, we've got Multi representing both defense and stamina, but focusing on the latter. Her hair color is green, and both of her outfits have some green on them. Well, part of her hair color has some green in it. In her cute outfit, her skirt has green ruffles alongside the yellow and pink ruffles, and in her cool outfit, the right side of her blazer has green stripes. So here's a question. Out of those 4 people who I just mentioned, how would you rank their outfits from worst to best? You tell me in the comments. That's why now Beyblade has the representatives of attack types being blue, stamina being yellow, balance being red, and defense being green. It's funny we actually have 10 representatives for this list too, and that actually makes my idiot brain happy. So let's start with that list. First up is Max Tate, or Max Mizuhara, who is one of our main characters, the strategist of the Beybladers, and one some people argue is the weakest, despite having 13 wins and 5 losses in the original series, 7 wins and 7 losses in V-Force, and 6 wins and 7 losses in G Revolutions, and even then those losses came from really powerful people, while his wins are actually pretty impressive when you look into it, actually. The funny thing is that his Bit Beast Drasteel is based off the black tortoise, Granbu, with a purple head. Still, all of his Beyblades had green in some sense of the word. But Max is an interesting character. In the manga, Tyson was his first friend in Japan because, as surprisingly common in Japan, many people like him experienced discrimination and mistrust thanks to being a newcomer because he was a foreigner, even though he's half Japanese. His mom is American and his dad is Japanese. Also, there's a belief Max's parents are divorced. Yeah, it's not true. He lives with his father in Japan while his mother does Beyblade research in America. The two still love each other and love Max, and while it's not easy, long-distance relationships work out. Ironically, Max is the only character in this video whose defensive Beyblade is tied to the water elements. While gravity plays a role to some degree with a few of his attacks, they're mostly tied to water, when traditionally green is associated with the wind or earth elementals, as we'll see much later down the list. Though you could make the argument that one of his Viper Wall attacks does actually imbue more wind than water, though it was probably meant to represent a downward current, fits Black Tortoise's color scheme more, and probably thanks to a lack of animation techniques at the time. Also, props for Max for being the first blader to focus on an exclusively defensive battling style. He's had to go up against some intense opponents like Michael, Miriam, Zio, Kai, Tyson, Daichi, and Mistel. Yet he's been able to go head-to-head with all of them. Even when against Mistel, people were worried he was going to lose, but he was still able to net a draw when Daichi and Ray lost their battles while Mistel trounced someone with good attack power like Lee. He's far from a jobber, and Max is an iconic Beyblade character for a very valid reason. Next up is Kyoya Tatsugami, probably the lead non-villain rival with the least hatred next to him, since Kai's face turns got really annoying for some people, and some people found Shu overrated. Like, the only hate I've ever seen Kyoya get is when he left the group doing Fury in 4D, but he immediately got humbled for that when Yu and Titi managed to convince him to get off his high horse and go help out. Like, you're a blader. You're going to be surrounded by people no matter what. That being said, Kyoya is interesting as a defensive blader because part of what makes him dangerous compared to the rest of his gang was that he was the only one with a special move at the time, which played into his defensive type. But after losing and training with Doji, he became more brutal in his battling style. More special moves, more aggressive. And while that got him to be so reckless at times, his Beyblade could have been destroyed completely had it not been for Madoka. So, put respect on my girl's name. After that, he's pretty solid in using his defense for a more effective offense. It's why he's been able to fight stamina bladers like Damien and Agama, since his wind specials can counter their abilities gained from their massive endurance, and it's allowed him to take on attack bladers like Jinga, Tobio, and Ryuga head-to-head. So, I know what you're thinking. No Zero-G, Bay Wheels, or Bay Raiders content? Well, I tried to find some, but I couldn't. Guardian Leviathan has some green tints on it, but Kite shares the blue water theme with his brother. And fine, sometimes these things happen. Gigante owned the River Beast Gil, and despite his size, he's not a power type, but a balance type, which one could argue actually makes him more dangerous. Leon owned the green Berserker Byakko in Bay Warriors, Bay Raiders, but that's a speed type, which is funny because his Bay Wheels was a power type in the previous season. Funny how that works. And let's move on to Burst with my main man, Kensuke. And I don't want to hear any slander for our green puppeteer and his adorable blushing faces the dub censored. Anyway, fun fact, the Midori and Midorikawa actually means green. And when you take that original last name in Japanese, it means Green River, which is so funny because despite the name, Kerbeus doesn't have any water relations or moves tying it to it. That being said, Ken's the first introvert we've had, which actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Defense is about conserving your energy and personality in order to survive and be resilient. And I know a lot of people who can relate to Kensuke. Someone always having to move and struggling to make friends, making choices to get other people's skin, and a coping mechanism for their own insecurity, generally forming connections only to leaving, and slowly making new friends while not abandoning their own and growing in confidence. So why didn't he get used in Burst Season 2 when Guardian Kerbeus was out? And how was he the only member of the main six in Season 1 not to be a part of the World Championships when he easily could have been on Dyna's team and given him a Rentaro rematch from the Season 1 tournament like Vault got with Dyna? And why did it take the Japanese team until Season 7 to finally bring him back? Either way, I'm glad he came back, and rest in peace to his first English actor, Gabe Kauf. His character is always important. Max had that element to him, but he had a cast that allowed him to be himself out of the gate. Kyoya was anger turned independent, so it's important we have a character that's defensive in nature, who still has those elements, but is allowed to grow and change like Kensuke did. Next up is Kwan Kimidori. His Japanese name Kimidori means yellow and green, hence why the dub made his dub last name a mix of lemon and lime, limon. And you know what those two colors are based off. That being said, he's interesting compared to the other three we mentioned. Kwan's not exactly a cheerful guy or an introvert, and he's got more team morale than Kyoya does. I'd say his best personality, or the word that fits him best, is strict, because he's respectful to anyone but Vault, since he couldn't see what Shaka and Shu saw in him. And while it's cool to get some Sword Flame's backstory, he mostly just existed for Vault's developments. And he did that pretty well, given he put Vault in a funk during the whole team tournament arc until the Ride-At battle, and was the linchpin for Vault to finally master the Super Awakening. Which is really funny because in the manga, he only fought Shu in chapter 20 and lost 1-2. I also like how his blading style is an offensive, defensive style similar to Kyoya. His Beyblade could flip in midair, deflect attacks from the ground, and strike fast. I know some people think Kwan was a bit too hard on Vault, but I respect the writers using him to push Vault's character. Now for who became the most recurring green defensive type blader that didn't semi-retire like Wakia did in Burst, Cisco Carlisle. He's rude, arrogant, confident, only wants to start fighting opponents and craps on others he doesn't like, only to get humbled over the course of the series into becoming someone who needs to improve on and away from the stadium. And Cisco kind of ended up becoming the detragonist of Season 2. Thanks to his losses against Shaka and Free, he's the one who takes on the final battle against Joshua using Vault's frame to boost his attacks. And there's a good chance Free could have lost that fight given the changes. Something the old him wouldn't have done. And he does well enough to be considered an honorary member of the Big Five in Block B, taking on all of them and beating everyone but Louis and Free. In terms of the green aesthetic, that's the tough part to justify with him on the list. He's got messy green hair, wears a green jacket, and gets a black fur trimmed green jacket and adding dark green pants in Season 5. Ironically, his B-Citon has great scales across his neck and chest. Curse has more green elements across its layer. Ironically, Cisco and Kyoya have a fair bit in common with them being jerks at the start of their intro season, mellowing them out into becoming better people, and even in Sparking, he's able to put up a fight against Free and manage to defeat Louis and Drum working in tandem with Free. Someone he has yet to surpass yet, so Cisco is more than just some jobber. After Cisco is Kyle Hakim? What, you thought it was going to be negative about legacy characters? Please, if you've been on this channel, I have been much more nuanced than that. Although, if you want me to do a full video on how Beyblade Burst handled legacy characters, let me know in the comments and we'll talk about it then. But I don't hate Kyle. Him earning Kerbeus in a tournament from South America and being revealed as a spy for Hearts and Evel by using the data from the battleship crews, while also manipulating the other Bladers to fight for him in team battles was really funny, especially since he pissed off Bai so much that the latter was willing to self-destruct and let Renjiro win just to stick it to him. But I wish we got to see more of him not holding back. The fact that he was able to actually give Free a solid fight is like super underrated, and I wish more people talked about that more. I'll touch upon this in a future video, but one thing that really bugs me was that there really wasn't a connection to Kensuke like they did with Jean Shaka, the Kiyamas, hell, even Fumiya. Plus, we never learned what he did after his final fight with Aiga, which is a bit of a shame. Next has to go to a character I'm not entirely sure how the rest of the community feels, but I'll always defend Amane Kusaba. I think Amane is interesting because he's the best friend character, but in a way is actively the supporting protagonist when you think about it. He stayed to win victories when everyone on the team left for Fumiya's team. He earned Ichika's trust when her brother couldn't even do that. And while he's tough on Drum, their friendship really pays off. Like, Drum always believes in him, because in the second to last fight between Hell and Victories, Drum trusted him to be the one to take on Arthur 1v1, and that trust paid off. Amane spent the last quarter of the show trying to unlock Gold Turbo after having all this build-up for potential, and Amane ended up being the first person to burst the Beyblade with the Big Bang armor and participate in the Rainbow Turbo at the end. The only major problem I have with Amane is that while he's the ultimate underdog in Burst before Bird made it cool, I feel like he could have used a few more wins, especially in the second and third arcs of the shows. A rematch with Pot and Joe were right there since the former was fighting to see who could use Gold Turbo first, and the latter joined Hell, even though Joe was kind of used to hype going up. At that point, maybe he could beat Loden in an intense fight, but that would be a hard matchup. But regardless, I like Amane. Also, his green bandana, aura, gloves, and Ashura being his green guardian wisdom buddy that just proud to be his partner is sweet, and we love that. Ah, my phone dropped. Oh, what? You think Pre doesn't count? Well, I mean, she has her Killian here, plus. I'm going to make an exception because when using Twister, her aura changes to green. She's got green lights on the Beyblade. It's part of her arc where she starts improving once she uses Twister Pandora, only to be undermined by Pac screwing up Pre and Belle's plan to use Twister Break, and her defending, or rather excusing her brother's actions, starts to crack after this episode, especially since Aiga and Kit play a role in the next arc where, despite Pax's plans, she ends up losing those fights. Plus, like I said with Kyoya, wind tends to primarily be the element that gets the most focused on out of the defensive bladers on this list, but the next two are about to change that. Hell, maybe you could argue three. Finally, we are at the X series, and let's start with Multi. See, having two Beyblades give her an advantage, but I think what's interesting, besides the fact that technically she is the first protagonist to use a defense and stamina type blade, which, thank God, finally, it took forever. Nightland started Multi using the Extreme line as a counterattack, and it being treated as her more offensive of the two types, since she angles her Beyblade to make it slant and uses its tall height, especially for its special move, Rainy or Raining Lance to attack the opposing Bay from above with a powerful force smash attack. And you could make the argument based on the swords flying down from the mountain, there's the earth element in nature. Ironically, it's her new stamina types that have a win motive, given that at the time when the video goes out, Sophie's breath is animated as a gust of wind, rejuvenating the Beyblade stamina, while her new stamina type Beyblade, I will not spoil until later, got its own wind-based attack. Then there's Takumi Ishiyama, who I guess is the closest thing Bird has to a main rival until Shieru showed up. He fits perfectly. Green attire, a massive jerk in the beginning that slowly develops into a more complex person, given his battling style clashing with the flashy combat of Slash Tower. His loyalty to his team versus the need to have a sponsor. His experience still leaving him at the bottom floor of the X until later on. Stopped crushing Beyblades. Valonk starting to get public tutoring. And was much nicer to Shieru following their rematch. Plus, he's also following his development on Season 2 by moving to Solidus, and actually proving that he's a decent person who's taken his experiences to heart, which we respect. And finally, there's Shieru. Green bandana, green eyes, green black Beyblade, and when I accidentally typed Shelter Drake in the script, it's actually supposed to be Black Shell. Fitting his Beyblade's homage to Drasil, but he's unique in that compared to everyone else, his blading path and, well, manipulation into Common Z came from being admired by someone else, when everyone else besides maybe Pre came into this wanting to Beyblade for their own means. That's not a bad thing, of course, and given that the anime went out of its way to introduce him early and elaborate on his backstory, Season 2 also continues the journey while the manga only showed the plot lines for one chapter to introduce, where he actually apologizes to Bird for his favoritism towards Chrome messing up how he viewed other people, and shifts to a balance type that's unfortunately red and not green, so that's where I kind of have to end that segment. I think looking back on all these bladers on the list, it's that their patterns don't necessarily define them. Max, Amane, and Pre are easily the nicest bladers in his group and have similar defensive styles of holding out against their opponent and making a strategy to counterattack. But their reasons to drive on their Beyblade characterization are all different and unique. Meanwhile, we get the jerks who get to mellow out, but in different ways. Kyoya realizing the Dark Nebula was using him, Takumi getting more mental and supportive systems around him to nurture his style, Shieru almost losing in front of everyone, Cisco becoming a more valuable blader, and I think we can all learn a valuable lesson from that. Hell, Kyle's the one person here who didn't become a better person upon their defeat. Even Quan and Motzi aren't bad people, but are more complex in their motivations. Plus, they all have some amazing Bay battles throughout the series, and at the end of the day, isn't that what we're here for? Yeah, partially. Story matters too. Well, that's it. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone watching. Have a great day, and BIP of Bizarre Interest Productions signing off. Holy crap, how is this almost at 20 minutes? What the hell?